as the club members. Here, John Much is given an injection that will raise a painful welt on his arm. He then will help measure the effectiveness of a new pain-relieving salve developed by the company. You're next, men. Next in line to contribute a little pain in order to eliminate perhaps an awful lot of pain that might be suffered by others. Club members receive certificates attesting to the fact that they belong to the unique organization. Something one can hang on the wall, we should say, with real pride. Throughout the world, patients like the young boy who has just skinned himself at play and is about to feel the hurt disappear can extend thanks to those 150 Chicagoans whose generosity helps the advance of medical science.
American employees are better informed than their counterparts anywhere else in the world. Industry is constantly improving employee-employer understanding through face-to-face contacts, employee opinion polls, company publications, bulletin boards, and in-plant meetings. Each year, thousands of employees contribute to the suggestion system set up by management. Such a free and steady flow of facts and opinions, both to and from employees, helps bring about better understanding, cooperation, and harmony in working relationships.
Industry on Parade visits a Falconer, New York factory, which for a century and a half has been turning out furniture and allied products made of wood. Products like the children's toy blackboards being assembled here. Throughout the plant, the air is filled with the smell of wood, the sight of wood, and the sound of wood being sawed, sanded, shaped, and otherwise fabricated. With such long experience in woodworking, it's not surprising that the American manufacturing concern should decide to utilize wood in its own plant wherever possible. For example, notice here the jig used to hold drawer parts in place while they're being together. The jig is built almost entirely of wood. It's the same with all the other equipment in the factory. If they can make a machine part of wood, they do so. It's not just an economy measure, it's a matter of pride with these people. They tell their customers how good they are at woodworking. What better way to prove it than to use wood in jobs ordinarily reserved for metal? Even a drum in which parts are tumbled to remove saw burrs is wooden, and it's been operating now for 50 years. Hard to think of a machine that takes more abrasion than this one, and yet around and around it goes after half a century. Bearings, too, made of wood. Carts and dollies made of wood, even the wheels. The originator of most of the unusual tools is Frank Pratt, head of the pattern department, who can make a board sit up and do tricks. An old-timer who isn't afraid to defy conventional methods, even to the extent of using wooden pulleys for belt sanders. By no means, of course, does the company fail to keep up with modern production demands. No firm can and still remain in business. You name the tool, and they've got it. But even with up-to-date equipment like multiple drill presses, they use wooden accessories wherever possible. As a material for the implements used by men, wood is just about the oldest. And so it's refreshing to find a group of people who are still so enthusiastic and imaginative about its possibilities. We get so swept away with the fast-developing innovations of our day that it's well to remember that some of the things, like wood, which our fathers respected so highly, remain among the most versatile, serviceable of materials, even today.
1915. The head of the house is trying to get away to the office, but a detachable starched collar, which is the order of the day, is holding him up. This old collar has all but passed from the scene now, and shirt manufacturers like those at the Philip Jones Corporation plant in Pottsville, Pennsylvania, are even happier about it than is the no longer strangulated male population. The big change that's come over men's shirts in the past 40 years was not an accident. It resulted from the thought, study, and experimentation of experts like Louis Warmcastle, an anthropometrist or specialist in the dimensions and functional capacities of the human body. The first such expert employed by the company back in 1919 was John Manning Van Heusen, who invented the soft collar and gave his name to the company's line of shirts. Thanks to men like Warmcastle and Van Heusen, shirt production in this country has grown prodigiously, much faster than the number of adult males. Skilled operators here and at the company's 13 other plants across the nation assemble a good share of the 268 million shirts produced in this country every year. Attached collars, including the wrinkle-proof type being made here, are now found on more than 99% of all shirts made. By ingenious methods, a number of flat pieces of cloth, collar, back, yoke, sleeves, and so on, are put together so as to fit perfectly a shape with not a single flat area anywhere on its surface. Each shirt is carefully inspected and trimmed of trailing threads before being ironed and folded. They slide the finished garment into its soil-proof plastic wrapper like this, and away it goes to the man who will buy and wear it, then on to the woman who will wash and iron it. She'll spend a lot less time on this job, incidentally, than her mother and grandmother did before her, even though the average husband's supply of shirts numbers an even 1 dozen, as compared with the 1 or 2 owned by his grandfather.
More than 1/2 of America's 64 million working men and women today are employed in business and industry that didn't even exist 50 years ago. These new frontiers of work and achievement have been opened up largely in industries such as chemicals, electronics, automotive, and atomic energy. All possible only under our free individual and economic system. Our nation's constantly expanding industrial and business horizons offer high hope for the youth of our country.
"40 miles north of Gallup, the El Paso Natural Gas Company pushes a 34-inch pipeline westward toward California. Behind the ditching machine walks Tom Cummings, one of 5 archaeologists on the company's payroll, keeping an eye out for evidence of buried objects from earlier civilizations. Wherever the clamshell buckets dig into government land, federal law requires the assignment to the job of scientists who can recognize and protect sites of archaeological interest. Thus, the pipe-laying project offers an excellent opportunity for studying one of the earliest inhabited sections of the country. Tom and his colleagues also range out ahead of the ditchers and bulldozers, looking for broken pottery, flint chips, arrow points, or other signs that an ancient structure or campsite may exist under the surface. Going beyond the requirements of the law, they do not confine their work to the 60-foot limits of the right-of-way, but follow up interesting leads wherever they find them, solely in the interest of science. The Indians who originally inhabited this area were Pueblos, predecessors to the Navajos who live here now. Tom's assistant is a Navajo, and he's understandably fascinated with the scientific evidence of his people's past, intrigued, for example, with the information that up to just 70 years ago, American Indians had constructed the largest apartment houses in the world, buildings of 4 or 5 stories, accommodating as many as 1,200 persons, and this centuries before the birth of Columbus. 1,000 years ago, the Pueblos used stone masonry. Adobe came later. To make sure no part of the ancient structure will be damaged by the pipe laying, the archaeological crew excavates to determine the extent of the buried settlement. In the process, they uncover a great deal of valuable information about a civilization that flourished long ago and then, for no clear-cut reason, went into a decline. Here, Cummings unearths a metate, on which cornmeal was ground many hundreds of years ago. Photographs are taken, sketches made, notes cataloged, and sample artifacts taken away for study and museum display, after which the old structure, now accurately spotted on a map, will be filled in again for protection against the weather. An industry which is making history on its own takes the time, trouble, and expense to reveal new facts about the history of our land in days long since gone by.